Did Donald Trump just force China to sell billions worth of Bitcoin and deplete their entire stack? Well, let's dive in because we've got some breaking news here. It happened early last week that China was reportedly selling their entire nearly 200,000 worth of Bitcoin that was seized from Plus Token, despite the claims of transferring it to a national treasury. Now, why is this involved with Donald Trump, and why is this potentially because of him? Well, I believe it could be because many are saying that Donald Trump might not be holding true to his promise here with his Bitcoin strategic reserve, because they are looking at it as a quote national digital asset stockpile instead of a Bitcoin strategic reserve, which are leaving many to ask, did Trump's crypto order deliver on his promise? Or is this all smoke and mirrors, apparently, here, folks? Is this an issue where Donald Trump, now not being extremely bullish on Bitcoin, has caused China to sell off all of their Bitcoin? Well, I mean, the only source that we have here is the on chain data seeing a lot of Bitcoin being moved from China's stockpile as a slow sell off. But David Bailey of Bitcoin Magazine is saying here that not all, but some has been sold. They stopped selling when Trump announced his support. But the crypto quant CEO said that they've sold all or nearly all of their 20 billion Bitcoin seized here. And he does a lot of on-chain analytics. And so they've been following this scheme since 2019 when China seized all of this Bitcoin in this Ponzi scheme. The Ponzi scheme of Plus Token swindled investors out of billions of dollars, and speculators that nearly 194,000 Bitcoin was sold through exchanges. And Chinese had previously stated that this seized cryptocurrency was transferred to national treasury, but it did not clarify whether it was sold or simply stored. Zhu expressed doubt about a censored government holding a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, stating a censored regime holding censorship money seems unlikely. And I agree, folks. I agree. I've always been skeptical of China being one of the largest Bitcoin holders in the world. Actually, the second largest holder behind the United States. Now, there's been rumors of the United States potentially selling off Bitcoin, right? Because the DOJ announced that they have approved the sale of 69,000 Bitcoin from the United States. That's 69,000. That's a decent chunk there, folks. But it's not quite the amount that China is talking about selling. They're talking about selling their entire stash, 194,000. So I thought initially this 207,000 would potentially be depleted once the DOJ announced that $69,000 or 69,000 Bitcoin sale, and that would bring the US down to number 2. Well, it seems like United States and Trump have actually held on to that number 1 spot of the top holder of Bitcoin in every single nation state. And I think that's going to continue here because Donald Trump is talking about building the strategic reserve. He's had the, digital asset stockpile. He's talked about exploring the strategic reserve, but we've gotten a lot of skeptics when it comes to other countries such as China, right? I mean, they're looking to sell their 20 billions worth of seized, and their 194,000 Bitcoin worth treasury has nearly sold here. So they've looked at this, and they're offloading its Bitcoin worth over $5 billion, significantly impacting the market. Where I think it is kind of interesting that it's not just offloading initially. There's been a lot of rumors floating around as to what is crashing the market currently. Is it some random new AI that China is coming out with, or is it the fact that China's recently been selling off their Bitcoin as well? These are some things that could add up to the potential of the price dip that we're seeing here right now. But I think that it is very interesting that, we're looking at this national digital asset stockpile opposed to just the strict Bitcoin strategic reserve, right? So it's making see, it's interesting, right? Traditional media thinks that this is making good on the promise of support and use of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. The executive order fell short of creating a Bitcoin strategic reserve outright, as some crypto advocates had hoped. The price of Bitcoin briefly surged on the news, but fell back to daily lows. So the idea of a strategic reserve of digital tokens, see, this is where I think I'm getting worried, where, maybe other countries are jumping ship here, because we're looking at it as, hey, Donald Trump just created Trump coin. He created Melania coin. He created Barron coin. All of these Trump characters here have their own crypto tokens, but we're not sticking to Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. Does that mean the strategic reserve is not going to be Bitcoin only? That's a question I guess we'll have to find out here in the near future. But Trump and RFK have, always been advocating for Bitcoin, and especially RFK Jr. speaking at the Bitcoin conference. They've called Bitcoin digital gold. Now, I actually had an interesting discussion today, thinking that if Bitcoin is merely just digital gold, then maybe it had lost in the long run. But that's neither here nor there. We have a bunch of other people in the industry, such as Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, pushing for a Bitcoin strategic reserve, saying that he's excited about it. I mean, he really wants to be the first Bitcoin president, and he, as in Donald Trump. But, it's been impacted severely here recently on, will this Bitcoin strategic reserve actually come true in 2025? You see, we've seen a 10% dip here recently. Now just over a 55% chance on, will this happen in this year? Now, I, for one, am a little bit more worried about it just from the rumblings that we're hearing here, right? We're seeing China sell off. Then that might raise some flags in the United States being like, hey, I'm not quite sure if we should. Or is this going to be creating the Cold War of Bitcoin of sorts? Hey, we're publicly selling off all of our seized Bitcoin, but then, it's going to come out years later that they had some secret mining operation, as Kingdom of Bhutan, for example, one of subsidiaries of China, or a country very close to China, that many believe the policies are affected by what the Chinese do. Now, the Kingdom of Bhutan was secretly setting up this mining operation. They were actually buying and holding Bitcoin through Celsius network. So we would have never known the Kingdom of Bhutan was holding Bitcoin unless the Celsius network failed and went bankrupt, and all of this information had to come out via their bankruptcy. So that is an interesting tidbit here, where I think, maybe we wouldn't have known about the Kingdom of Bhutan if it wasn't for some of the exchanges that failed within this last cycle. So, we're looking at a lot of interesting things here. One being the U.S. Strategic Reserve is going to pass in 2025. And the other thing is will this pass within the first 100 days? Now, this seems very grim. It seems very grim here, where it's just strictly at a 17% chance. And, I think a lot of people are looking at, Trump's Bitcoin strategic reserve, asking, because this wasn't passed initially, did he deliver on his promise? He signed this executive order trying to establish the U.S. dominance in digital assets and financial technology. He partially delivered on a campaign promise, and that's a big word here, partially delivering on that campaign promise to create a Bitcoin stockpile. And he even rephrased that executive order, which has created some confusion about whether it's possible. The executive order promises regulatory clarity, and some of those changes are already seeing begun to happen. The SEC has also rolled back contentious accounting rule that effectively prevented traditional financial firms or banks from acting as custodians. So, of course, Trump has done a lot of positive things, and I'm not saying that this all of the positive things that he did created or caused China to sell off Bitcoin. I just think it's interesting timing. Trump releases the executive order, and then it's rumored that China is selling off their Bitcoin almost immediately. Now, we've got Meech Dog in the chat here saying, actually, I love the fact that he didn't come out strictly with wording of Bitcoin reserve because that meaning we have more time to accumulate sats for a cheaper price instead of massive buying. Hey, I mean, I'm with you for the cheaper sats aspect of it, but I am very worried about the United States potential to become a shitcoin country, to be blunt with you. Like, what are we going to see here with Trump? I still have my guard up with him. Are we going to see something where he's going to try to implement a Trump coin in the strategic reserve? Are we going to start to see, some other aspects of Ethereum, some other things start to mix in there and then their way in there? If they're donating enough money, I mean, we're seeing Ripple actively and openly go against a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And maybe I'll do a video in that in the future, folks. But we have a lot of people really going against Bitcoin and going against making a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Now, China, I don't necessarily think that they are, quote, attacking Bitcoin by doing this, by selling off, the massive amounts of Bitcoin that they're selling off. But I'm not, I'm a little, worried that this is causing potentially an arms race. And then we're seeing the price dip here. The price of Bitcoin absolutely plummeting to $101,000. I mean, if you would have told us all 6 months ago that this was the case, I think we would have all been very happy with the way things are going, especially, with the recent or with the run up that we've seen the past couple months. But I think that this is going to be very interesting here, right? We're going to see the US either make a decision where they got to shit or get off the pot at this point. They have, 200,000 Bitcoin. They almost have 1% of the entire market. If they get up to that 210,000 mark, then we'll get China slowly behind. Is China actually selling? Who knows? The UK, and interesting enough, the Ukraine is using a lot of our tax dollars that we're sending over for wars to buy Bitcoin. Then we have the Kingdom of Bhutan, a quiet giant here, as maybe being the base for China and what they plan on doing going forward. El Salvador continuing to buy. Finland getting sneaky up there. Then we see Georgia and Germany, who have recently sold off. So I think we're going to see a lot more strategic reserves start to come up and about. But I do think it's interesting that this is the first one that we're seeing that was allegedly moved from seized to a strategic reserve, and then they're already selling it off. Now, why is China doing that? Is this a safe and secure way? Are they doubting the fact that the strategic reserve could be a positive here going forward? I'm not quite sure on all of those answers. All I do know is that the best way to buy Bitcoin is not holding it with a custodian. As I mentioned before, if Celsius didn't go under, which is a very clear example here, they went under. So the Kingdom of Bhutan then reported everything that they were buying. If the Kingdom of Bhutan was holding their own keys or not using some sort of counterparty, which brings in a bunch of risk, we wouldn't even know they were holding Bitcoin. And then how quietly could they become one of the world's giants? And how quickly could that happen? I'm not quite sure. But what I do know is that the best way for you to buy Bitcoin just individually is by going to the Bitcoin Well. You could go to the bitcoinwell.com/green candle and you could join. I'm giving you the opportunity to win 1 million sats here, folks. 1 million sats. And the great thing about the Bitcoin Well is they're strictly non-custodial. So you need an outside wallet in order to buy it directly from them. They've got competitive rates. You could buy it, send it directly to cold storage. You could even direct deposit, and they've got a great OTC desk here. So if you got some big players here, you're seeing this dip to 101,000 and you're thinking, hey, I want to buy 50K or more. This is the time to strike. You go to the bitcoinwell.com/green candle, go to OTC, set up an appointment with them right away. You can even click on this, go to access their infinite, Bitcoin Well Infinite, and you can go set an appointment right away with them, and I'll make sure they take care of you. So go ahead and do that if you're looking to make a big smash buy, because if I'm looking at this price here of 101, I think it's extra juicy here. I mean, as Meech Dog is saying, Bitcoin for cheap will never not be a great opportunity. True Bitcoiners know this. Bitcoin will rise and take out. It's only a matter of time. And I couldn't agree more. I see this as a good buying opportunity. China's being really stupid by selling off these $20 billion worth of Bitcoin that they got for extremely cheap. They had this in 2019, folks. They seen Bitcoin crash to $3,000 or $3,500 and rise all the way up to now it's quote unquote crashing at $101,000. Are you kidding me right now, folks? What are we even talking about? Why is China actually selling this off? They are going to regret it. Same as Germany, and some of these other nation states that we're seeing sell off. But seeing this chart here just makes me extra bullish on the future going forward, because we all know these coins are going from weak hands that we're seeing in the Chinese government to now strong diamond hand holders in the Bitcoin community, as we are all going to be scooping up these coins as quickly as possible. So I'm going to rip another one here later today. Oh, here we go. We got another one. China flip-flops more than Michael Dukakis. Don't take them serious or even pay attention to them. I don't know who Michael Dukakis is, but it sounds like he's a Greek guy, man. He's got the Greek last name. I got to be impartial. I'm half Greek, so I can't be too negative about a fellow Greek here. But it sounds like he is pretty negative when it comes to Bitcoin. So maybe I should slow the roll there. But I've got a great interview for you guys that I dropped with Jeff Booth here. I encourage you guys to check it out. 53,000 other people already tuned in the past 6 days. So it's one of the better interviews I think I've ever had. And I'm really, really proud of this one. And then I'm also going to do another live stream at 6:30 Eastern time. So if you guys enjoyed this one, come join me later on today. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, tell a friend to tell a friend. And thank you guys all for joining me here today.